But the twist? The shares are being bought using an identity connected to Lily. Is she behind this? Alive? Against him? The place is an abandoned lighthouse by the sea. Ethan was there. He's about to leave. A taxi pulls up. What will happen next with Ethan? Is Lily was behind all of this? But before we start the video, let us know where you're watching this video, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe Story Store, and please share your thoughts about this story in comment section. In medias res, a wrinkled hand, scarred by time and loss, rose slowly. $100 million, said the old man, Ethan Miller, voice low but unshakable. Gasps rippled through the elite Manhattan auction house like aftershocks. Phones froze mid-click. A silence fell so sharp it could cut glass. The item? A black-and-white photograph, dog-eared at the corners, showing a young woman mid-laugh as she leaned toward a street vendor. Her eyes shut, her joy unfiltered. To the world, it was vintage clutter. To Ethan, it was Lily, the woman who shattered him into pieces and unknowingly became the glue that rebuilt him. As the gavel slammed, cameras exploded in flashing fury. Reporters surged forward. "Mr. Miller, is this your first public appearance in over a decade? Why spend your fortune on a worthless photo?" one barked. Ethan turned toward him. His face was old money and older grief, lines etched not by age, but by aching years. He gave a tired smile. "Because this photo cost me everything it took to become a man worth loving." They didn't understand. Of course they didn't. They didn't see the string ring in the girl's hand, the one he'd tied around her finger beneath a leaky Brooklyn roof. They didn't know that photograph was taken seconds before she said goodbye, walking straight into a marriage that would break them both. They didn't know he had spent 40 years building an empire, hoping she'd see it, somewhere, somehow. But Ethan knew, and as the crowd whispered, the auctioneer slid him the photo like it was gold. He turned it over. There it was. Still faint, still waiting. In Lily's handwriting. "Ethan, if you see this, I never stopped waiting. Find me. April 8th. At the place we once dreamed of the sea. Below it, GPS coordinates, tomorrow's date." His hands trembled. His heart didn't after all these years. She had left a sign. Flashback. Brooklyn didn't sleep, it leaked. Ethan Miller, 30 years old and threadbare, sold bitter coffee from a dented cart near the subway. His ceiling dripped. His shoes talked back with every step. His dreams, crumpled like the napkins he scribbled them on. But every day she came. Lily Carter, his childhood best friend turned daily miracle. She drank his burnt coffee like it was champagne, laughed like she wasn't engaged to New York's golden boy, Bradley Chase. They never talked about the ring on her finger, only about someday. Then came the rain. It poured like the sky was grieving, and through it Lily appeared, soaked in satin, her wedding dress clinging to her like regret. Her mascara ran like she'd been crying for hours, maybe years. "Bradley's waiting," she whispered, shivering under the cart's broken awning. "But I couldn't leave without seeing you." Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. He stepped forward, gripping her frozen hands. "Run with me," he said, not a question, a promise. Her lip quivered. She leaned in like she might, like she almost did. Then she whispered, "If you still want me, leave me a sign." A breath, a tear, and she vanished, disappearing into the fog and sirens like a ghost in white. He stood there long after she was gone, soaked to the bone, watching the puddle where her footprints once were. He didn't know it then, but that was the moment his old life ended, and the legend of Ethan Miller, the man who lost everything for love, began. Flashback continues. Ethan didn't sleep that night. By candlelight and trembling hands he poured himself into ink, a letter that bled with hope, sorrow, and fire. Meet me at Grand Central, midnight, platform 13. If you believe in us, come. He folded it with care, tucked a pressed flower inside, one she once placed behind her ear on a summer day when they were 17, and mailed it straight to Lily's brownstone. But fate had a cruel gatekeeper. Bradley found the letter first. He didn't scream, he didn't rage. He smiled, a cold, glass-cut thing, and dropped it into the fireplace. Then he made a call. 2 men found Ethan at closing time. They didn't take his wallet, they took his breath, his ribs, and his hope, leaving him bloodied in a back alley, whispering Lily's name like a prayer. But still, he went. Midnight, Grand Central, limbs aching, heart louder than the trains. He waited and waited. She never came. He didn't know she never saw the letter. Didn't know she cried in a penthouse she couldn't escape, wondering why he broke her heart a second time. To Ethan, it was clear. She made her choice, and he was nothing. He left New York in silence, limping through the Greyhound terminal with nothing but a bruised rib and a suitcase borrowed from a neighbor. Chicago welcomed him with snow and silence. He lived in a friend's garage, pitched wild startup ideas over stale donuts, and was laughed out of every room. Until one day he pitched DropSwift, a delivery network run by the homeless for the homeless. People laughed harder, except Margaret Dawson, a retired schoolteacher with a cane, a quiet smile, and the look of someone who'd survived her own war. She listened. Then, without a word, slid her life savings across the diner table in a creased envelope. "I believe in long shots," she said. "I used to be one." He cried in the parking lot afterward, not because he had money, but because for the first time in forever, someone saw him as more than broken. That's where it began. One borrowed envelope, one stranger's belief, and a fire that would burn into legend. Lily Carter became a ghost the day she said, "I do." Behind closed doors, Bradley's love turned into a leash. Her phone vanished. Friends were cut off. Her name erased from everything that made her her. On the outside, she was Mrs. Chase. Perfect smile, perfect pearls. Inside, she was crumbling. He tracked her every move, locked her out of bank accounts, and called her property when no one was listening. But Lily was not the kind of woman who stayed silent forever. One afternoon, under the guise of a shopping trip, she slipped out through a department store's emergency exit, sprinted barefoot across traffic, and disappeared into the underbelly of the city. She checked into a women's shelter as Claire, a name borrowed from an old novel she used to read in the coffee cart days. She cut her hair, burned her old ID, and clung to the only thing she had left from Ethan, a torn photograph of them laughing beside the coffee cart, and a fraying string tied into a ring. She stared at it nightly. "If we ever lose everything," Ethan once whispered, looping the string around her finger, "this will tie us back together." She never stopped searching. Every tech article, every interview, every whisper of a startup rising from the ashes. She didn't know if he was still alive. But she knew one thing. If Ethan Miller ever built something real, it would be for her. It started with a dog. One of DropSwift's delivery boys, 16, homeless and barely surviving, rescued a limping stray during a late-night shift. He wrapped it in his hoodie and delivered the package anyway. Someone filmed it. The video went viral within hours. "Kindness on the clock," the headline read. Suddenly, DropSwift wasn't just a company. It was a movement. Investors flooded in. News crews camped outside the garage-turned-office. By the end of the month, Ethan Miller was on every cover from Forbes to Time. But the world couldn't understand his silence when they asked about his success. At every interview, he gave the same response: "I built this for someone. Until she sees it, I'm still poor." He didn't name her. He didn't have to. He worked tirelessly, barely sleeping, chasing a dream that had a face, a voice, a laugh. Every door that opened, every dollar that came in, it all traced back to one girl who drank burnt coffee like it was magic. They called him a visionary, but inside, he was still that boy in Brooklyn, clutching a string ring and waiting at Grand Central. He didn't want fame, or even fortune. He wanted a sign, a whisper in the wind that somewhere, somehow, she still believed in him too. At first, it looked like a glitch. A new investor had quietly begun buying up massive shares of Dropswift, millions at a time. No press, no boardroom appearances, just silent, relentless acquisition. The name on the paperwork? Claire Whitmore, a woman officially declared dead in 2011. Ethan's stomach twisted. Was it corporate sabotage, a ghost investor, a trap? He hired a private investigator. Days turned to weeks. The trail led through shell companies, encrypted accounts, offshore layers meant to blur truth. But then, a slip. A digital receipt tied to a donation, made to the very shelter where Lily Carter had once vanished. Ethan froze. Claire wasn't a ghost. She was Lily, alive, watching, moving pieces from the shadows. He stared at her signature on the filings, the soft loops in the L, the way she dotted her I like she always had, with a faint tilt to the right. Why hadn't she come to him? Was she trying to take Dropswift from him, or protect it? And most haunting of all, did she still love him? Or was this just closure cloaked as a comeback? That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, because hope had become terrifying again. After all these years, the woman who vanished with his heart might be closer than ever. Back to the present. The photograph wasn't just nostalgia. It was a message disguised as memory. As the auction crowd buzzed and cameras flashed, Ethan sat alone in a private lounge, hands trembling as he turned the photo over. Faded ink danced across the back. His breath caught. "Ethan, if you see this, I never stopped waiting. Find me. April 8th. At the place we once dreamed of the sea. Below it, handwritten coordinates. A date. Tomorrow." His chest tightened. He remembered the place. An old lighthouse off the Oregon coast. Something they'd dreamed of fixing up when they were young and stupid, and still believed love could outrun anything. Back then, it was fantasy. Now, it felt like destiny calling through time. How had she hidden this message here? Had she known he'd one day be rich enough, desperate enough, to bid on what looked like worthless junk? He stared at the ink until it blurred. His heart raced like it hadn't in years. This wasn't just a call for closure. It was a test of everything he still carried in the wreckage of his past. He stood, clutched the photograph to his chest, and whispered her name for the first time in years. Lily. Tomorrow, he'd go, and either find the ending he never got, or the beginning he never dared hope for. The wind howled like it was mourning lost time. Ethan stood at the base of the crumbling lighthouse, salt air stinging his face, heart pounding like it was 20 again. The place hadn't changed, weather-beaten, lonely, defiant. He waited 10 hours. The sky darkened. Doubt crept in. Maybe it had been a cruel joke. Maybe the past was meant to stay buried. Then, headlights. A rusted car rolled through the fog. The door creaked open. She stepped out. Gray-haired, shoulders tense, eyes heavy with survival and years unlived. But it was her, Lily. Neither of them moved at first. Time had turned them into strangers who still remembered how to breathe each other's name. "You left," he said. "I never wanted to," she whispered. "You killed me." "So did I." They fell into each other, not cleanly, but like waves crashing into jagged rocks. Anger, relief, grief, and love tangled all at once. Inside the lighthouse, they talked for hours. She told him everything: the abuse, the fake death, the shelter, the shares. "I wasn't trying to control Dropswift," she said. "I was trying to protect it, for you." Ethan held her hand, trembling. He had loved her through empires and ashes, and now, finally, she was home. The next morning, Ethan called a press conference. Cameras, microphones, headlines, all fixated on the man who rarely spoke in public. He stood beside Lily, hand in hers, photograph in his pocket. "I'm transferring every Dropswift share I own to a trust in Lily's name," he said. The crowd erupted. "You're giving it all away?" someone shouted. Ethan didn't blink. "I didn't build Dropswift for profit. I built it for love, and she's the reason it exists at all." Reporters exploded with questions. Financial experts called it madness. Stock analysts scrambled, but Ethan didn't flinch. He had lived with nothing, loved through nothing, and now that everything was his, he finally understood what enough looked like. "This company doesn't need a king," he said. "It needs a heart, and she's had mine all along." Lily didn't speak. She only looked at him, eyes wide, a single tear rolling down her cheek. For the first time in decades, she wasn't surviving. She was seen. He kissed her hand in front of the world, not as a show, but as a thank you. For waiting, for surviving, for still believing in a man everyone else had written off. And just like that, Ethan Miller, the billionaire, let go of the thing the world thought defined him. Because what truly made him rich was standing right beside him. It began as a forgotten tape in a dusty shoebox. A street photographer turned filmmaker had been digitizing old footage from New York when he stumbled upon it. Unlabeled, worn, and half erased, he almost threw it out. But curiosity won, and when he pressed play, the world changed. There was Ethan, young, broke, full of fire, spinning a radiant lily beneath the soft drizzle beside his rusted coffee cart. She was holding a cup with both hands, laughing so hard her shoulders shook. They danced, out of rhythm, in love, as if nothing else existed. The clip was only 3 minutes long, but it struck like lightning. At the end, Ethan turned to the camera, rain on his lashes, and said, "If this ever becomes a story, let it end in love." The film went viral overnight. Millions watched. News anchors cried. Dropswift's value skyrocketed. But Ethan didn't blink. He refused to reclaim even a fraction of his shares. "Love was always the point," he told the press. "We just forgot for a while." He and Lily watched the video in silence the first time. She held his hand, her thumb tracing that same old scar near his knuckle. "You were beautiful," she whispered. "You still are," he replied. They didn't need a sequel, they were the ending. And across the world, strangers who saw that clip didn't just believe in second chances. They started looking for their own. The wedding came 40 years late, but right on time. No guest list, no grand venue, just a stretch of wild Oregon beach, soft waves rolling in, and a sunset painted in gold and forgiveness. Lily walked barefoot down the makeshift aisle in a second-hand dress, salt in her silver hair, a string ring on one hand, and a little girl from the shelter, now her goddaughter, scattering wildflowers ahead of her. Ethan waded barefoot too, in a simple linen shirt, tears already tracing lines down his weathered face. There were no vows, just the silence between two people who had already lived them. After the ceremony, they sat on a driftwood log, fingers laced. A young reporter, barely 10, approached shyly with a mic too big for her hand. "Mr. Miller," she asked, "are you rich now?" Ethan looked at Lily. She was laughing at something the flower girl had said, light in her eyes like it had never left. He kissed her knuckles and smiled softly. "I was poor when I had money," he said. "Now? I'm richer than anyone alive." The girl blinked. "Even without Drop Swift?" "Especially without it," he said. The waves clapped in agreement. That night they didn't fly anywhere grand or check into luxury. They stayed in the old lighthouse. No lights, no press, no plans. Just each other. And after all the years apart, pain, silence, and searching, they finally slept peacefully in the same dream.